The imposing bodyguard, the grand hall of the Xantari Palace, was filled with the hum of anticipation. The galaxy's most powerful empire, the Xantari, had long ruled through fear, strength, and unyielding control. In the center of the room stood the royal family, seated upon their opulent thrones. At their side, towering above the others, was the imposing figure of their bodyguard, a creature unlike any other in the galaxy. His name was Gorik, the apex predator, a living weapon bred for one purpose, to protect the Xantari Empire and its rulers. Gorik stood silent and still, a shadow in the room. His massive form an unspoken symbol of the Xantari's power. His scales, the color of polished stone, shimmered faintly in the soft light. His eyes, a deep amber, were cold and calculating, scanning every corner of the room for threats. He had been trained from birth to be the perfect bodyguard, and the reputation he had earned throughout the galaxy was nothing short of legendary. No one dared cross the Xantari with Gorik by their side. He was their most trusted protector today. However, the atmosphere was different today. There was an unexpected visitor, a human diplomat who had come to negotiate peace on behalf of Earth. The Xantari had little interest in peaceful negotiations. They saw no reason to treat the humans as equals. To them, Earth was just another small, insignificant planet in the vast galaxy, easily controlled and easily crushed if needed. But today, this human was standing in front of them, ready to speak, to offer peace. The human, Kira, was a diplomat unlike any Gorik had ever encountered. She was smaller than the Xantari, with a quiet strength that seemed to ripple beneath her calm exterior. There was no fear in her eyes, no hesitation in her stance as she faced the mighty warlord's family. The human, despite her size and species' limited strength, carried an air of quiet confidence. The Krogan had laughed when they heard about her, and so had the Xantari. Yet here she stood, unwavering, as if this meeting was nothing more than another day in her life. The Xantari royal family, led by the fierce warlord Zalar, watched the human with thinly veiled disdain. Zalar's eyes locked with Kira's for a brief moment before turning to Gorik, silently acknowledging the presence of the apex predator. They didn't need to worry about her. No one could pose a threat with Gorik by their side. But as Kira stepped forward to speak, Gorik felt something shift within him. It was subtle at first, just a slight prickling sensation at the back of his mind. Humans had always been considered weak and insignificant by the galaxy's standards, but this Kira, was different. She didn't bow before the Xantari, as most species did. She didn't flinch when she was met with the chilling gaze of the apex predator. And as she began to speak, her voice calm and firm, something stirred within Gorik, a feeling he hadn't felt in years: doubt. "Greetings, Warlord Zalar," Kira began, her voice steady and clear. "I come in peace, offering the possibility of alliance between our two worlds. The humans are not your enemies. We seek to share knowledge, resources, and ensure a prosperous future for all species. I ask that you consider the possibility of coexistence." Her words were not what Gorik had expected. In fact, they weren't anything like he had imagined. Diplomats were usually submissive, begging for mercy, pleading for their lives. But Kira wasn't pleading. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't even intimidated by the mighty Krogan or by him, the apex predator. Instead, she spoke as if she had the power to change the fate of the galaxy. It was not arrogance, but quiet assurance. It made Gorik pause. His gaze lingered on her as she spoke, her eyes unwavering, meeting the challenge of his stare. There was something about her, something that called to him in a way he could not explain. She was not the first human he had encountered, but she was the first to make him feel anything other than disdain. He had always been taught that humans were weak, easily crushed under the power of the Krogan. But as Kira spoke, he felt a stirring inside him, a flicker of curiosity, and perhaps even respect. The royal family, however, seemed to care little for her words. Warlord Zalar dismissed the diplomat's proposal with a wave of his hand. "We are not interested in your peace," he sneered. "Earth is weak, your species inferior. You cannot offer us anything of value. Leave now, or we will dispose of you as we have with others." But Gorik didn't move. His eyes remained locked on Kira, and as Zalar's words washed over him, something inside him resisted. The arrogance and superiority of the Xantari were nothing new to him. It had always been the way of things. The strong dominated the weak, and the weak served them. But Kira was not weak, she was different. And that difference stirred something deep within Gorik, a sense of unease and perhaps, for the first time, a flicker of admiration for a species that had been underestimated for so long. As the conversation continued, Gorik found himself less and less focused on the exchange of words. He was focused on Kira, her confidence, and the calm in her eyes. In that moment, the human diplomat had made an impression on the apex predator unlike any other. The idea of an alliance, of peace, of working together began to take root in Gorik's mind, but as the conversation drew to a close, the tension in the room grew. The Xantari were not ready for peace, and they would never give in to what they saw as weakness. The ultimate question remained, would Gorik continue to serve the Xantari with the same loyalty he had for years? Or would the appearance of one human diplomat change everything? The quiet Chalanga. The atmosphere in the palace was thick with tension. Raxil, the son of the warlord, had just insulted Kira in front of everyone, and the room held its breath, waiting for her to respond. She stood there unshaken, her calmness radiating confidence. The Krogon were waiting for her to break, to show weakness, but Kira didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice, she simply locked eyes with Raxil, unbothered by his taunts. Gorik, still standing to the side, could feel something shift within him as he watched the exchange. Raxil, with all his bravado, was used to intimidating diplomats, breaking them with insults and threats. But Kira didn't respond the way anyone expected. The moment Raxil mocked her, she didn't react in anger or fear, she didn't retaliate with insults. Instead, she responded with something far more dangerous, calm resolve. Kira took a step forward, her voice low but firm. I am not here to argue with you, Raxil, she said, her gaze unwavering. I am here to represent my people and offer a future of peace. We are not the enemy, we do not seek war, but if you believe you can threaten us, you are wrong. Raxil's smirk faltered, the arrogance that had been his strength began to crack. He had expected Kira to bow her head or beg for mercy, but instead, she had stood her ground and delivered a message. He was taken aback, a rare feeling for the Krogon prince. He wasn't used to this. Humans were supposed to be weak, vulnerable, and easily broken, but Kira was different. Her words stung him in a way he hadn't expected. She dares to challenge me? Raxil muttered under his breath. He couldn't fathom why this human, standing so small before him, had made such a bold claim, but Kira's next words made everything click for Gorik. You think you can break us with your strength and your war, but the truth is, you underestimate us. Humans are capable of more than you realize, and we will not cower before anyone, especially not you. Her words lingered in the air, echoing in Gorik's mind. He knew the Krogon only respected power, but he also knew that there was more to strength than just force. The human diplomat's confidence had planted a seed of doubt in his mind. She wasn't intimidated by the Krogon, nor was she afraid to stand up for her people. She had just made a bold claim, and Gorik couldn't help but feel a strange sense of respect for her. For years, Gorik had been taught that the Krogon were the ultimate predators. Their strength, their brutality, their power were all that mattered. He had been the apex predator, the bodyguard that protected the Krogon royal family. But this human diplomat had shown him that there was another kind of power that didn't rely on size or strength, but on resolve, intellect, and a deep, unshakable belief in one's cause. The silent invitation later that evening. As the royal family gathered to discuss the diplomatic exchange, Gorik found himself unable to focus. He was supposed to be standing guard, keeping watch over the palace, but his mind kept returning to Kira, her calm demeanor, her unyielding words. They had shaken him in a way that no battle or fight ever had. He couldn't explain it, but he knew that her presence was having an effect on him. The Xantari royal family, oblivious to Gorik's inner turmoil, discussed the next steps in their dealings with Earth. They were dismissive of Kira, still seeing her as a weak representative of a backward species, but Gorik was no longer so sure. The more he thought about Kira's words, the more he realized that there was truth in what she had said. The Krogon Empire ruled through fear, but what if there was another way? Later that night, as the palace emptied and the quiet of the night settled in, Gorik's path crossed with Kira's once again. She was alone, walking through the dimly lit corridors, her head held high, as if she were already preparing to leave the palace. She didn't seem worried about the Krogon. She didn't look like someone who was running away from danger. There was something different about her. Gorik's heart raced as he approached her, unsure of what he was going to say. His loyalty had always been to the Krogon, to the warlord and his family, but the thought of what Kira represented, the possibility of peace, the possibility of change, made him feel something he hadn't felt in years. Uncertainty. Kira stopped when she saw him, her eyes meeting his with a knowing look. You've been watching me, she said softly. Do you think we can really make peace between our peoples, Gorik? For a long moment, Gorik said nothing. The question hung in the air, heavy and full of meaning. I don't know, he finally admitted, but maybe there is more to strength than I've been taught. The moment of decision. The night had grown quieter, the stars outside the palace windows now shining brightly in the deep void of space. Gorik paced slowly through the corridors, his mind heavy with questions he had never allowed himself to ask before. His duties as the apex predator of the Krogon Empire had always been clear: serve the royal family, protect the warlord's bloodline, and ensure that no one threatened the Xantari. His loyalty to his people was ingrained, unshakable, but now, a seed of doubt had been planted by Kira, and it was growing fast, threatening to unravel everything he had known. Earlier that evening, he had found himself standing in the shadows, watching as Kira left the royal chambers, her footsteps quiet and confident. She wasn't a defeated diplomat, not in the way he had expected. There was power in her presence, and Gorick couldn't deny it. She was not intimidated by him, nor was she afraid of the Krogon Empire. It was the first time he had ever seen anyone stand before him without fear, and that was something he couldn't easily forget. But as the echoes of her words reverberated in his mind, there's more to strength than power. Gorick's resolve began to waver. The Xantari had always ruled with fear, their strength and violence the foundation of their empire. Yet, Kira's presence, her calm demeanor, and unyielding belief in humanity made him question whether their approach had been the right one. Was it possible that humanity, with their intelligence and resilience, could have the strength to bring real change? As he stood by the palace window, watching the stars pass by in the distance, Gorick felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The Krogon Empire was built on the idea that their species was the ultimate predator. But Kira had shown him that there was another kind of power, one that came not from force, but from the ability to inspire, to unite, and to outthink your enemies. This realization hit him like a shockwave, and for the first time in his life, he found himself questioning his loyalty to the Empire. The image of Kira's unshakable confidence haunted him. She had stood before him, speaking with quiet authority, and for reasons he couldn't explain. He had found himself listening, truly listening, to what she was saying in her words. There was a challenge that went beyond the confines of this room, beyond the Krogon's brutal rule. She was offering peace, yes, but also something far more dangerous to the Krogon, a future where humanity might stand as equals, and where the Krogon might no longer dominate the galaxy. But there was more at stake now than just his loyalty to the Krogon. If he chose to stand by Kira, he would be betraying everything he had been taught. His life as a bodyguard, his honor, the very role he had played in protecting the Krogon Empire, it would all be shattered. He had been raised to believe that the Krogon were the rightful rulers of the galaxy, and that he, as their apex predator, was the strongest of them all. But now, he was beginning to see the cracks in that belief. An unexpected visitor. Next day, Gorick was summoned to the royal chambers. The meeting was meant to be a routine one, but as he entered the room, he felt the unmistakable presence of Kira in the air. She was sitting at the long table, speaking with the warlord and his advisors. The royal family, as usual, seemed dismissive of her presence. But there was something different today. The atmosphere in the room was charged with a palpable tension. As Gorick stood by the door, watching the conversation unfold, he noticed something strange. Kira was not just making her case for peace anymore. She was speaking in a way that Gorick had never seen before. Confident, yes, but also assertive, almost challenging. She was questioning the very foundation of the Krogon Empire and the way it had ruled for centuries. What good is strength, Kira said, if it leaves you isolated? You may be the apex predators, but what happens when you stand alone against the galaxy? The Krogon Empire is built on power, yes, but what happens when that power is turned inward? Gorick watched her carefully. This was no longer a simple diplomatic negotiation. Kira was planting seeds in the minds of the Xantari, seeds that would grow into doubt, perhaps even rebellion. He could feel it. It was as if the very walls of the palace were closing in on him. The warlord's advisors were tense, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation, but it wasn't just the advisors who were uneasy. Gorick felt something stirring within him, a strange recognition of what Kira was saying. Her words were no longer just diplomacy, they were a call to action. She was asking the Krogon to look beyond their immediate power and see the greater picture. The question she was posing was simple: could they continue to dominate the galaxy with brute force alone, or would they need to adapt and change? The realization hit him like a hammer. Kira wasn't just offering peace, she was offering the galaxy a new way of living, a way that didn't rely on fear and destruction. And that was something Gorick had never considered. Could the Krogon ever change? Could he change? The Krogon royal palace was on the edge of chaos. The quiet of the corridors had been replaced by hushed whispers, with servants and guards exchanging glances filled with uncertainty. The Krogon Empire had always been an impenetrable fortress, its strength and dominance unchallenged for centuries, but now, a subtle but unmistakable shift was occurring. Gorick's thoughts were a whirlwind. As he wandered through the halls, the decision he had been avoiding was now unavoidable. Kira's words had found a place in his mind and heart, and no matter how he tried to dismiss them, they lingered. His instincts told him to stay loyal to the Krogon to protect the empire that had shaped him into the weapon he was. But Kira's quiet resolve, her unwavering belief in peace and cooperation, had shaken him in a way that no enemy ever had. The more Gorick thought about his loyalty to the Krogon, the more it felt like a cage his entire life had been built around protecting the royal family, following orders without question. He had been the apex predator, the protector of their empire, feared by all who faced him. But now, standing in the cold emptiness of the palace halls, he felt a growing sense of disillusionment. Kira had made him see something that he had never considered before. The strength of a species wasn't just in their ability to destroy, but in their ability to build, to adapt, and to form lasting bonds with others. The Krogon were powerful, yes, but their power came at a price, one that they had been unwilling to pay for centuries. They dominated and destroyed, never pausing to think of what might happen if they tried something different, and that's where humanity had shown him something new. As he walked down the corridor, Gorick's footsteps echoed in the silence, a steady rhythm that reflected the conflict inside him. His mind kept drifting back to the moment when Kira had spoken directly to him. She had seen him for what he truly was, not a mindless tool of the Krogon, but a living being capable of change. He stopped in front of the grand window overlooking the stars, his reflection staring back at him. The cold light of distant stars flickered through the glass. The galaxy stretched out before him, endless and full of possibilities. And yet, Gorick felt as though his world had suddenly become too small for the path he had walked for so long. An unexpected alive, quiet hum of the palace was broken when one of the royal advisors, a high-ranking Krogon named Zarek, appeared at Gorick's side. Zarek, who had always been a voice of reason within the royal court, regarded Gorick with a piercing gaze. The two had shared a deep respect for one another, but Zarek had always known Gorick's loyalty to the royal family ran deeper than anything else. But today, that loyalty seemed less certain. Gorick could feel the tension in the air, the subtle change in the way Zarek looked at him, as if he had already noticed the shift in Gorick's demeanor. "You're troubled," Zarek said, his voice calm but heavy with understanding. "I can see it in your eyes. Something has changed. You've always been our protector, but now, you seem distant." Gorick's gaze turned toward him, his mind working to find the right words. For the first time in his life, he wasn't sure where his loyalty lay. The Krogon had always taught him that strength, dominance, and pride were the ultimate goals. But the humans, especially Kira, had shown him that strength could come in many forms, not just in brute force, but in intellect, diplomacy, and peace. "Zarek," Gorick began, his voice almost a whisper, "I've been questioning everything I've known. Kira, she's not like anyone we've faced before. She's different, and her message, it has made me see the Krogon Empire differently. We have never truly considered peace, have we? It has always been about conquering, about ruling, about crushing those beneath us. But humanity is showing us something else." Zarek's expression softened, and for the first time, Gorick saw something akin to empathy in the older Krogon's eyes. "You are not the first to question the Empire's methods, Gorick. I have seen the cracks in our foundation for some time now. But you must understand that the galaxy is not ready for the Krogon to change. There are forces in motion, and if you side with the humans, you will be branded a traitor." Gorick's heart pounded. He had never considered the consequences of turning his back on the Krogon. He knew the risks, the consequences could be deadly, not just for him, but for anyone who dared follow him. But something about Kira's belief in humanity's strength, her quiet determination, made him feel like this was a cause worth fighting for. He was beginning to realize that the fight for peace was not a weakness, it was a strength that the Krogon had never understood. The secret meeting that night, Gorick sneaked away from the palace, leaving the Krogon behind. His heart raced as he made his way to a secluded area within the palace grounds where Kira had requested to meet him. The thought of betraying everything he had known was terrifying, but the urgency of the moment pushed him forward. When he arrived, Kira was already waiting for him, her calm presence offering a strange sense of peace amidst the chaos. "You've come," she said softly, as if she had known he would. "I don't know what I'm doing," Gorick admitted, his voice low, "but I can't ignore what you've shown me. You're right. The galaxy doesn't need more destruction. It needs understanding, cooperation, peace, and I want to help bring that about." Kira smiled, her eyes full of hope. "It's a long road, Gorick, but together we can change the galaxy. We can make the Krogon see what they've been missing. You don't have to be alone in this." The flight of the betrayer. The dark corridors of the palace seemed endless. As Gorick made his way through them, his thoughts a swirl of uncertainty and resolve. Kira's words still echoed in his mind, and despite the crushing weight of his decision, he couldn't help but feel that this was the right path. The cold stone walls seemed to close in around him, but his pace remained steady, driven by a force stronger than any physical strength he had ever known. This wasn't a decision born out of weakness. It was one born out of a newfound understanding of what true power could be. For the first time in his life, Gorick had questioned his place in the universe. For years, he had been the perfect weapon, born to protect the Krogon royal family, designed to be ruthless and efficient. But now he felt something stir within him, a sense of rebellion, not against the Krogon, but against the very notion that strength could only come from fear and destruction. Humanity had shown him a different way. They weren't strong because they could destroy, they were strong because they could endure, adapt, and rise above the cycle of endless war. Kira had believed in that strength. And now, so did he. Gorick's mind was focused on the task at hand. There was no turning back. The Krogon Empire was powerful, but Gorick knew that the only way to change the galaxy would be to unite those who were willing to fight for peace. He had already taken the first step, and now he was about to make history. As he moved through the palace's high-security corridors, Gorick knew he had to act quickly. The royal family had already noticed his absence, and his betrayal would not go unnoticed for long. The Krogon were relentless when it came to traitors, and he knew that if he didn't leave now, there would be no escape. The Xantari's loyalty was a deadly force, especially when it was threatened. The palace gates were just ahead. He could see the flickering lights of the royal guards posted at the exit. The Krogon were vigilant, and they would stop anyone trying to leave, especially someone as important as Gorick. But there was a way out, a hidden passage known only to the highest-ranking officials, and one that had been built long ago for emergencies. Gorick had used it many times before, but this time, it wasn't an emergency, it was an escape. The unexpected alias. Gorick moved deeper into the passage. He felt a sudden shift in the air. Someone was following him, but it wasn't a Krogon guard. It was Kira. Her figure appeared from the shadows, her presence just as calm and steady as it had been the moment they first met. "You're not going to do this alone, Gorick," she said, her voice unwavering. "We've both made sacrifices to get this far, but this isn't just your fight, it's mine too. We're in this together." Gorick stopped, turning to face her. In the dim light, he could see the determination in her eyes. She wasn't afraid, she wasn't running. Kira had been the one to offer peace, and now she was offering something else: partnership. Humanity's fate and the fate of the galaxy were tied to this moment. Together, they were both risking everything. "Why help me?" Gorick asked, his voice low and confused. "Why risk everything for someone like me?" Kira smiled, her eyes glowing with a quiet strength. "Because, Gorick, you've seen what humanity is capable of. You understand that we're more than just a weak species. You've already made the hardest decision of your life. Now it's time to make sure it counts." Gorick's heart thundered in his chest. He had chosen the path of change, but now he had a true ally in this mission. With Kira by his side, he felt more determined than ever to see this through. The silent pursuit tunnels beneath the Krogon palace were as cold and silent as the stars outside. Every footstep echoed, a reminder that time was quickly slipping away. Gorick and Kira had barely made it out of the royal chambers before the Krogon realized they were missing. The palace alarms would be triggered soon, and every guard in the Empire would be searching for them. There was no turning back now. With Kira beside him, Gorick moved swiftly through the darkened corridors, his mind still racing with the weight of his decision. The Krogon Empire had been everything he knew. His whole life had been dedicated to protecting it, to serving it. Yet now, with each step away from that life, the weight felt lighter, less constricting. In the face of everything he had once stood for, there was a quiet relief in knowing that he had chosen something different, something better. And yet, the fear of discovery, the fear of what the Krogon might do to him, not at him. Kira, however, was calm. Her confidence was unwavering, a beacon in the darkness. She had spoken to him earlier about humanity's strength, about how their greatest power wasn't in their physical might, but in their ability to adapt, to endure, to survive. She had reminded him that humanity was far more than just another weak species. Gorick had seen that strength in her resolve, and now, as they hurried through the winding passageways, he understood what she meant. They came to a crossroad. Gorick stopped, listening intently. The faint sounds of footsteps reached his ears. Krogon soldiers, no doubt, already in pursuit. The palace guards were always close, and it wouldn't take them long to realize that two of their own had gone rogue. "We don't have much time," Gorick whispered to Kira, his voice tense. "If they're already this close, they'll have the entire palace locked down soon. We need to get out of here now." Kira nodded, her face set with determination. "I know. There's a transport shuttle not far from here. We can use it to get to a safe location off-planet, but we'll have to move quickly." Gorick didn't hesitate. He had no time for second thoughts. His loyalty to the Krogon was gone. replaced by something much more pressing: the need to protect Kira and ensure their survival. Together, they moved swiftly deeper into the palace, where the transport bay awaited. The air seemed to grow thicker, more oppressive with each passing second. The sounds of the approaching guards grew louder, and Gorik could feel the weight of their pursuit closing in on him. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to fight too. Turn around and tear through the soldiers that came after them, but now was not the time. Now was the time for escape, for survival. The fight could come later. They reached the transport bay, but as they approached, the door slid open, revealing a single Krogan soldier standing guard. He had been stationed there, waiting for them. His expression cold and unreadable. Gorik and Kira froze, momentarily caught in the tension. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. But before the soldier could even move, Gorik's instincts kicked in with the speed and precision that had made him an apex predator. He lunged at the soldier, his powerful hand clamping around the Krogan's neck, silencing any attempt at a cry for help. Within seconds, the soldier crumpled to the floor, unconscious. An unseen enemy as the shuttle flew through the atmosphere. Kira and Gorik looked out at the stars. The tension of the moment slowly began to dissipate as they moved farther away from the Krogan stronghold. But then, just as they thought they had outrun their pursuers, a loud warning blared on the shuttle's console. An unidentified ship had locked onto their coordinates. Gorik's heart sank. The Krogan weren't the only ones who had been watching. The galaxy had a shadowy underworld of mercenaries and bounty hunters, and it seemed that one of them had just made their move. "It's a bounty hunter," Kira said, her voice filled with grim understanding. "We've been tracked." Gorik's eyes narrowed. He had fought against enemies before, but a bounty hunter was a different kind of opponent. They didn't fight for honor. They fought for money. And they didn't stop until their target was dead. "We need to outrun them," Gorik said, his mind racing. "Can you get us to the nearest safe system?" Kira nodded, her fingers dancing over the shuttle's controls. "I can, but we'll need to lose them. This ship isn't built for speed." The shuttle jolted as the bounty hunter's ship fired a warning shot, its proximity a stark reminder of how close they were to danger. The chase was on. The final gambit. Shuttle shook violently as another volley of plasma fire from the pursuing bounty hunter's ship lit up the void behind them. The flashing red warnings on the console were a constant reminder that their time was running out. Kira's fingers danced across the controls, trying to keep them ahead of the enemy. But Gorik could see her frustration building. The shuttle, though fast, wasn't built for combat. It was a transport, not a fighter. "Can you shake them?" Gorik asked, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. He knew the stakes were higher than ever. They weren't just running from the Krogan anymore. They were being hunted, and every move had to count. "I'm trying," Kira replied through gritted teeth, her eyes scanning the controls. "But this ship's not designed for evasive maneuvers. It's too slow." They had to find a way to outsmart their pursuer, or their escape would be for nothing. They couldn't outrun the bounty hunter's ship with speed alone, but perhaps they didn't need to. They had something the bounty hunter didn't: knowledge of the galaxy and the ability to adapt. Gorik's mind raced. He had spent his entire life as the apex predator, the ultimate weapon of the Krogan, trained to think ahead, to anticipate the moves of enemies before they even made them. And now, for the first time, he was putting that training to use in a different way. Instead of fighting, he was trying to outthink their opponent. "We need to make a hard turn toward the asteroid belt," Gorik said suddenly, his voice clear with confidence. "If we go deep enough, we can lose them in the dense fields of debris. They won't be able to track us through all the asteroids." Kira looked at him, her eyes narrowing in thought. "It's risky. The belt is full of debris, and we could end up crashing." "Trust me," Gorik said, his voice calm. "We're better off taking the risk than facing that hunter head-on." Kira nodded, and without another word, she adjusted the ship's trajectory, sending them into a sharp turn toward the asteroid field. The shuttle's engines screamed as it veered dangerously toward the dense cluster of asteroids. Rocks of all sizes and shapes floating in the dark expanse. An unexpected allegist. As the bounty hunter's ship appeared to give up, a new signal pinged on Kira's screen, a strong signal, the kind that meant something big was coming. Gorik turned his head sharply. "Who's that?" Kira squinted at the screen. "I don't know. It's not the Krogan, and it's not the bounty hunter." A large ship materialized out of nowhere. A warship, sleek and deadly. Its hull was made of a material Gorik recognized. It was a design used by an old, secretive galactic faction that had long remained neutral in the galaxy's wars. The Shadow Fleet, they were rumored to operate in the fringes of the galaxy, choosing to intervene only when absolutely necessary. And now, they were here, silently emerging from the darkness of space. Before Gorik could say anything, the warship's communications system crackled to life. "This is Captain Lyra of the Shadow Fleet. We've been tracking the Krogan and..." The bounty hunter will get you to safety, but you need to follow our lead. Kira's face softened with relief. You're helping us? Captain Lyra's voice was calm, but there was a cold certainty to it. You're not the only ones trying to change the galaxy. Humans, stay close. And we'll ensure you get to a safe system. Asterisk, the final escapeeth warship from the Shadow Fleet, led the shuttle through the asteroid belt, expertly weaving between the debris, avoiding the bounty hunter's sensors. The pursuit had finally ended, but as they emerged from the belt, they knew that they had only bought themselves time. Kira and Gorik, still in the shuttle, exchanged a look. They had made it out of the immediate danger, but there were still forces at work in the galaxy, forces that sought to maintain control, to crush humanity, to crush them. The Krogon, the bounty hunters, the Shadow Fleet, and even other unknown factions, they were all part of a web that had been spun for centuries. And now, Earth was caught in it, but Gorik felt something new stirring inside him. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, he wasn't alone in his fight. Kira had shown him that humanity's strength wasn't just in numbers or weapons. It was in their ability to adapt, to form alliances, and to stand up for what was right. Gorik had chosen his side, and now there was no turning back.